Okay, so it is Thanksgiving night, and I'm on my way home from what may well have been my very last meal with my mother. And her health has deteriorated to the point where every time I see her, I always make sure to tell her that I love her and to make sure that all the cards are on the table between us, because I just don't know if I'm ever going to see her again on this side of heaven. So I hope that you'll bear with me tonight, as on my way home I want to have a little talk with you about honoring your father and mother and what I've been taking away. Those of you who know me well, particularly in this current time, have noticed that that some of the things have changed about me, particularly about my appearance. When I have my druthers, when I can do what I want, I have next to no hair. That is not because I think I'm very intimidating, and it is not because of, some kind of intense childhood crush on Yul Brynner. No, it is actually because although Yul Brynner, the King, and I has to be one of the most manly men that I've ever seen in my life. So I wanted to grow up and be him. No, really what's been going on is my mother has always been very jealous of the fact that in our family all the men have the curly hair, and she always wanted curly hair. So she would, whenever my hair got long enough, and I am young enough that as a child of the 80s and a soccer player I had curly hair in back, just want to let you know, I'll cop to that. But because my mother's health is failing and she loves for me to have long hair, that I've grown my hair out so that in the time that I have left with her, I'm going to have the hair that she wants. So after all of the plates were done and the meal was set down, I sat down with my mother on the edge of her bed while she was taking her treatment. And I asked her, when she was gone, what she wanted to happen in my life. What she wanted to see in my life when it was just me. And she had a couple things that she wanted to talk about, family relationships and that. But then she got down to what I would say was the heart of the matter. And she looked at me and she said, whatever you choose to do, I want you to do your absolute best at it. I want you to be the best at it that you can possibly be. Whatever you decide will make you fulfilled, be the best that you can be at that thing. And we sat down, we talked, and I looked at some of the things that I'm doing in my life. And I'm the kind of person who, as I refer to myself as a monk, because that's basically how I live. I work, I train in martial arts, and I pray, and that's my life. And so I sat down and I looked at those things, and where I could improve, what I could work on. Basically, what I've been thinking of is how in my life can I honor the commandment or the principle. And this is not just it is a Christian commandment. It's not just a Christian commandment. It shows up even higher on the list in Confucian thought. It shows up in Buddhist thought. It shows up in Jewish thought. And that is, how can I honor my father and mother? Now, I'm not going to say that my father and my mother were perfect people. Good gracious, I lived with them and I was aware of their faults and their failings. As a young man, things were very tense, very difficult between my father and I. There was a long period where I could barely speak to him without having an argument. He was an amazing man. He is an amazing man. He was an incredible physician, well respected in his field, and he worked so hard to provide anything I could possibly want in my life. I never lacked for anything while he was working. And I honor and I respect all of his effort. But by the time I was 16, I realized that the only thing I wanted from my father was my father's presence. Not my father's presence, but I wanted my dad to be there and to care. And he worked so hard and his skills were in such demand that the one thing that I wanted from my father I couldn't have. And so I sat down and I decided when I was a young man in college, how was I going to honor my father and mother when my very thought of my father at that time in my life made me see red. Like many young men, I didn't have the wisdom on how to deal with the problems in my life. I didn't know what I could let go of and what I could step by. In martial arts, if somebody tried to run me through or tackle me, I could pull my hip and get off the line, but I didn't have the mental discipline, I didn't have the spiritual focus to know that in life, if something was going to take me out, I could get off the line. I didn't have to tackle it. I didn't have to let it hit me. I could move aside. And so in my anger and my angst and, long periods of wearing far too much dark clothes, I realized that sometimes I could honor my father and my mother by being who they taught me to be, whether they lived up to it or not, by trying to live up to what I believe they wish they could be. There's an idea in American culture that every generation is better than the one. If every generation is better than the one before, then America, the American dream is succeeding, and we're going forward as a civilization. And so that's very much what I wanted to do, and I set out trying to do it. I had a fair amount of success in various fields, but here I am. I'm in the middle of my life and entering that season where I'm telling my parents, preparing to bid my parents farewell. And the question's taken on a different thing, because it's one thing to please your father and your mother when they can see you, and it's another thing to please your father and your mother when you know they can't see you. It's much easier. And I fully believe that probably within the year, my mother is not only going to be able to see me, she's going to be able to see me all the time. She's got other kids to look in on, etc. But, But what does it mean for me to honor my father and mother when my father and mother are no longer going to be there? And honestly, for me, I want to talk to you tonight about what that means. And maybe there's something in here that you can take away from, and maybe you can just hear somebody's situation and get something out of it. I don't know. Maybe the most I can offer you tonight is a bit of vulnerability and a bit of honesty about where I am in life. And if so, and if that's something that you can benefit from, then praise God and we'll keep going. So what can I do? Well, I work as a machinist in a small run part shop. We do small runs and prototyping and what they call onesie twosie work, where I might be doing 4 or 5 different jobs in a day. And that's good, and I can try and learn and improve on my skills there. I've been told my boss is considering sending me to advanced training, which will, make me even more valuable to my job. So that is a pretty clear path, and that's something I can honor. And I have my books that I write. When I was growing up as a young Christian nerd, as a teenage boy, I cared about God, but I wanted explosions and superpowers and starships and swords, and I cared about sex and I cared about relationships. And since most of the Christian publishing industry is aimed at 36-year-old women, these things did not exist. And so I decided when I was in my 20s that I would dedicate my life to writing the kind of stories that I wanted when I was in my teens and when I was in my 20s. And it turns out that I still want them when I'm in my 30s and my 40s. And so one thing I can do to honor my father and mother, I've decided, is I can move forward and I can tell the stories, not just the stories that I think that will sell, and not just the stories that I think will be commercially successful, but I can try and tell the most honest and the most entertaining stories that I can, and nothing really worthwhile lasting has no meaning. So I want to tell stories that have both a sword and a heart, that have a faith and a plot, that have characters you want to know, and and information that can benefit in your life. And so that path is forward. Most recently, I discovered that a young man in my life has very severe case of autism, and he's never in his life going to be able to read well because his brain simply doesn't have the capacity. So I can start to write the stories that I would want him to have in his life as he's growing up, and I can read them out loud, and I can try to get them on YouTube, and I can try to put them out on Amazon. And that's a way that I can honor my father and my mother. But not everything I can do to honor my father and mother are things of my father and mother. Neither my father or my mother has ever been overly interested in the martial arts, and martial arts has been a passion of mine for all of my life. I was 8 years old the first time. I had just turned 8 the first time that I was at the Concordia Language Villages, and we had a fencing instructor, and somebody swung a sword at me, and I discovered that I liked it. And ever since then, every moment that I could, I found something about the sword to learn. I think I watched every Zorro, everything ever made. I've read every Zorro book. The Count of Monte Cristo I watched and I read. The Prisoner of Zenda, Errol Flynn as Robin Hood. When I got older and I started to be a competition level fencer, and high school years, I didn't just read the current manuals. I wanted to get into the old stuff, and I wanted to see what fencing was like when fencing was life or death, and how we got to the weapons that we had. And I got very heavily into that, and looking at the medieval manuals and the things there. And in the last few years, the last portion of my life, I've gotten involved in martial art called Haedongumdo, a soft sword style, which is very fluid and very beautiful, and had other martial arts opportunities presented for me. And even though that is not something that I ever shared with my parents have always known that the martial arts are a passion in my life. And so when my mom's looking down on me, I know that I can still try and honor her by doing what she said. If martial arts is the path in front of me, as long as my health holds out, and it is, then my job is to be the best martial artist I can possibly be. And I'm going back to school. Not that I had a hard time in school last time. I began and completed an English degree, cum laude, in 2 years when the physics program closed, and I needed to get a degree quickly. I have more than 1.25 million words of fiction for sale on Amazon.com. That being said, I want a better day job so that I can have more time for the people and the things I want to do in my life. And so I've gone back to school, and I can try to set my goals high. Right? I can set my goals that I don't just want to get the computer science degree and don't want to graduate cum laude, which means with honors, as I did the last time. This time I want to graduate magna cum laude. I want to graduate with highest honors. And I want to be the best computer science, the best computer programmer in my class. And, when I'm training in the sword, I'm reaching a level where I've started to look more and more at Korean masters and look at what the high bar is. Not what I can get away with, not what the minimum is, but what is true world-class excellence. And we're very fortunate in the Midwest Haedongumdo community to have several competitors at that level, and look at their tests and look at how they perform and shoot for them. And I may, as a middle-aged man, never reach their level again. I may not have the physical capability, but if I fail trying to shoot for the absolute top, then I will probably fail much further along than if I simply do what I know I have to. And to set that goal before me, because that is something I can do. That is how I can honor her, whether is here to hear about it on the weekends when I call her, or if she's looking down on me from up on high and can see much more clearly. Then, whether I can see my mother with my face, or whether I only know about her from God's word and in my heart, I know that I am being the man that she wants me to be. And while I put up a pretty good front as a confirmed bitter bachelor, if if marriage and a family land in my lap, then to love them with all of my heart and to be dedicated and honorable, both strong and tender. That is something. And if I don't have a family, then to give those things to the family of friends and companions that God has put in my life, the people who are in my path, that I can do that. And all of this is good, and there's something in me that I think is innate to manhood that rises to the challenge, that sees the mountain ahead and says, not only do I think I want to conquer that, I think I might be able to conquer that, and whether I can conquer that or not, the challenge is going to be the thrill of a lifetime. Bring it on. Not only that innate, intrinsic striving that is part of the human condition that refuses to go quietly into the night, but rages and rages against the dying of the light. And goodness, look it up if you don't know that that's a quote. It's not mine. There is, in my faith tradition, because we have a father for the fatherless, and someone who will never depart from us, even though our loved ones may be taken away through marriage or life or death or sickness or war. There is one who has always been by our side from our first breath to our last and even beyond. And it's in the Christian scriptures, in the third book of Colossians, says, whatever you find for your hands to do, do it with all of your might, as if you were serving the Lord and not men. For it is the Lord Christ you're serving, and from him you have received the reward. And what's interesting is in the ancient language here, and this was passage written in Koine Greek, and it actually says with all of your psyche, which is not just your heart, it is your soul. It is your whole inner being. That is the challenge, and that is the call, and that is the battle that lays ahead. And as I'm driving home from my parents tonight, as I'm going back to my life that is laid out before me, there's something vibrantly alive in my heart at the thought of that challenge and of that battle. And I look at the monsters that lay ahead. I look at the dungeons to crawl and the challenges to face. And I think about the two arts that I have been invited to train in and to continue my path forward with, in addition to the sword, so that my school will be able to be even more prosperous and my business partners can have what they dream of, and I can have the school that I want to have. When I look at the academic world that has given me another shot and more chance to use the brain God gave me to move forward and to gain more skills, and then to turn around and use those skills for the benefit of society, that appreciation society then shows by giving you a profit. And when I think of the humility that I have learned working a blue-collar job, even though I came from an elite family, I'm not ashamed of good, honest work. My grandfather was an illegal immigrant who taught me if you have to work 3 jobs, you never go on the dole. You never go on the dole. You never go on the dole. And Grandpa, if he's looking down, I hope he knows that with the 4 jobs I'm working right now, 5 of you count college, that Grandpa, I heard you. And moving forward, the idea that not only can I fulfill the call of manhood to strive and to overcome, and not only can I fulfill the call of the law to honor my father and mother, to go forward and become the man that they wanted me to be, whether they're looking at me with earthly eyes or looking down on me in heaven. And even beyond that, with my relationship with the divine as my best understanding, which is the Christian faith in Jesus Christ, that I have, not only can I strive and not only can I try to fulfill, but I can give my whole heart without fear into these battles, because the battle has already been won by what Jesus Christ did to me through his innocent suffering and sacrifice on the cross for my failures and my shortcomings and my sins. So that even when I strive, and if I fail on short of the mountains that I have set my face towards, that I have already received my reward. I can't lose my prize, and the battle will be glorious moving forward. And I'll be going forward with companionship. I'll be going forward with love. I'll be going forward with the fellowship of my martial arts community. I'll be going forward with the encouragement and praise and challenge of my parents. I'll be going forward with the legacy of all of the teachers and all of the universities which have given me my education. And I'll be going forward with the blessings that God has given me in heart and mind and soul and body. And to this night, when we're looking at things to be thankful of, I'm thankful for the calling. I'm thankful for the challenge. I'm thankful for the battle. And I'm thankful for the hope that I can overcome, and in Christ I have already overcome. And that thought I wanted to share with you this Thanksgiving night. One monk out.